Hello, welcome. Today in Unit 20, you are listening to Dr. Sushma Singh on economic, social, and cultural dimensions of globalization. And we are going to discuss economic dimensions of globalization, and subtopic is privatization. Along with the liberalization of the economy in 1980s, the neoliberals of the UK and the US also advocated the privatization of industries and services to make enterprises more competitive and efficient so as to meet the challenges of the global economy. The UK privatized 80% of its public sector by 1980s. Privatization largely means setting of public-owned assets to private ownership by stages. Privatization can be done using any or all of the following techniques, like public offering of shares. All or part of the shares of the public limited companies are offered for sale to the public. Private sale of shares. All or part of the state-owned enterprise is sold to private individuals or a group of purchasers. New private investment in a state-owned enterprise. Private share issued are subsidized by the private sector or the public. Entry of the private sector into public sector. Private groups allowed to get into areas reserved for the public sector, such as the power and the telecommunication sectors in India. Contracting out the services and utilities like water supply, sewage treatment, etc. to private operators or contractors for operation and maintenance, while retaining ownership with the government. Sale of government or state enterprises assets as private sale instead of shares. Reorganization or fragmentation of subsidiary unit of a company. Management buyout, in which the management or the employees acquire the controlling interest in which shares are purchased on credit extended by the government. With the aim of privatizing the economy, the Indian government adopted various measures in 1990s. Initiatives such as abolition of license Raj for deregulation of the industries, scrapping of legislations such as MRTP and FERA, approval of 100% equity for NRIs, streamlining of approval committees, disinvestment in public sector undertakings, and reference of 6 industrial units to the Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction for rationalization were meant for more and more privatization of the Indian economy. Now let us discuss the foreign direct investment FDI and globalization of a financial market. Foreign direct investment FDI is money invested in production of a foreign party rewarded with the part ownership of production. Of the three important aspects of liberalization, financial, trade and investment, financial liberalization has been the most pronounced. During this globalization era, there has been progressive and extensive liberalization of controls on financial flows and markets, leading to economic globalization. Economic globalization and financial liberalization centers on the movement of capital, of which FDI was a major form. From the beginning of 1980s, FDI flows have grown much faster than the world output or trade or domestic fixed investment. The growth of FDI in 1990s was enormous. The initial burst of FDI in the late 1980s was almost entirely in developed countries and predominantly from the 5 leading developed countries. In the 1990s, developing countries began to attract substantial FDI, and there has been genuine geographical broadening of FDI. Since early 1990s, FDI flows to the developing countries have raised relatively averaging 32% of the total in 1991 to 1995 compared to the 17% in 1981 to 1990. This was due to the liberalization of the foreign investment policies in most of the developing countries during the 1990s. Private capital flows for direct investment and portfolio investment for developing countries have grown from 25 billion in 1990 to 150 billion in dollar in 1997. Also during this period there have been qualitative and quantitative changes in the world of international integration of global markets through the medium of FDI. The FDI explosion of the 1980s characterized by the investment inflow within the trade of EU. Japan and North America shifted in the 1990s to the known OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, countries as well. The flows were accounted by Asian countries, China, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. Latin American countries, especially Mexico, Chile, Argentina, and Brazil, and the Eastern European countries. There had also been a growth of major corporate alliances at global level during this period. FDI remained mainly market driven and they dominated the service sector. However, the flow of FDI even among developing nations was not uniform. Much of this FDI has centered on only a few developing countries. Least developed countries in particular were receiving only very small FDI inflows. Despite having liberalized their policies, there were some negative impacts of these private capital flows. There was a general and increasing concern about the fragility and vulnerability of the system due to the interconnectedness of the financial markets and system and the vast amount of financial flows. These were the risks of the breakdown in some critical parts or in the general system itself, as a fault developing in one part of the world or in the system can have widespread repercussions. These concerns were highlighted by the East Asian financial crisis that began in the second half of the 1997 and spread to Russia, Brazil and other countries, causing the worst financial turmoil and economic recession in the post-World War II period. Nevertheless, in 1990s, the consensus gradually emerged around the globe that foreign capital, if utilized properly, can contribute significantly to economic development. The same was true with India. The largest proportion of FDI approvals in India has been in the infrastructure and core sectors such as power, telecommunications, energy exploration, and chemical and metallurgical industries. India followed a case-by-case approach in approving FDI. FDI in India depends on the assessment of India relatively to other countries on several fronts. The main considerations are the political stability and credibility of the reforms, the state of the infrastructure, especially power, transport, and communication, national policy regime, speed and transparency in implementation of government policies, labor market conditions, and the intellectual property rights issue. FDI in India is permitted under the following forms of investment: through financial collaboration, through joint ventures and technical collaboration, through the capital market via euro issues, through private placements or preferential allotment. FDI is not a one-way process. In the open market system, Indian companies are also going global through joint ventures abroad. India's export in the year 2001 to 2002 was to the extent of $32,572 million. Many Indian companies have started becoming respectable players in the international scene. Agricultural products, marine products, cereals, oil seeds, tea and coffee are some prominent products that India has been exporting. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for patientful hearing.